Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, everyone. How is everyone feeling? Good. Yeah, it's a Wednesday night. The sun came out. We're all at Evermay to listen to Jodi Kantor. It's pretty good times. So, obviously, we're going to talk about your book, How to Start. But I couldn't resist to start with a slightly different question, which is along the lines of, in 2014, you wrote about the Starbucks algorithm and essentially had created a nationwide movement around fare scheduling. In 2015, you wrote about Amazon and their practices, which resulted in them applying paternity leave. Most famously, of course, your book, She Said, brought down Harvey Weinstein and ignited the Me Too movement. When someone learns you're writing a piece on them, how do they respond?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say that it is such a pleasure to be here with you at Evermay. I understand that I'm helping kind of inaugurate
You are.
your speaking
You're
program.
only the second, and we're so happy to have you.
That's an honor, and I'm going to tell every author in the world that this is one of the most beautiful rooms you can
Great.
possibly give a talk in. And thank you all for coming tonight. How do people respond? There are people who panic unnecessarily because I think, especially after the Weinstein story, they think legal, investigation, cops, trouble, bother. They just like sense trouble coming and sort of turn off. There are hopefully, though, other people who have read the work and trust me because of it. I mean, that is what a journalist wants most, is trust, both from sources, obviously, and then also with the public. And so it's very special when I call somebody and, they say, I had a Me Too experience and followed your reporting, or like something like that, because it's like we've been on a journey together. And also there are all sorts of things, I always say, like, I can't make decisions for people about whether to participate in journalism. But what I can do is help build people's confidence in telling the truth. And so if they've read the work, maybe they'll hate it, but hopefully that's the best way to give somebody confidence. And when someone can't decide whether to speak to me or not, because there are people who really deliberate and torture themselves, I send them 2 or 3 stories and I say, just read the work and you're going to know. You're either going to feel like, no, I would never want to be associated with this, like I'm getting palpitations just reading the first paragraph, or you're going to feel like, yeah, this is something I would be willing to be a part of.
Fantastic. And that's really like your craft, right? And your ability to lean on your craft to then get even more of a result than you were able to, presumably, as a nascent journalist. And we're going to talk about that because your book, How to Start, was inspired by the commencement address. I'm sure most of you know this, that you gave at Columbia University. And you were talking to a room full of people who were extremely nervous about starting careers at a time when the whole landscape is changing due to multiple variables. And your advice in the book really comes down to find a need and hone your craft. Can you talk about how you define those two things and how they interrelate?
Sure. So the book had kind of a dramatic origin story. Are there any Columbia grads in the room? Okay, hi everybody. So in the beginning of 2025, I got an email from the dean asking me to give the class day address, which is the commencement speech there. So a huge honor, obviously, but also a bad offer, because you remember what was going on at Columbia at the time. The place had turned so totally toxic on so many levels. And my friends were like, don't do it, call in sick. Like, you're going to get booed. But something in me was like, give me those kids, because I was really upset to see what had happened on such a special campus. And so I said, okay, great, I'm honored, I'll do it. the only thing is I need to spend time with the students before I give the speech, because I knew that this was a room I had to read very carefully. And so I got on a Zoom with the leaders of the senior class, and they said, journalists love tough questions, and they gave me like truly the gift of a tough question. They said, we don't want to talk about Israel. We don't want to talk about Gaza. We don't want to talk about President Trump. We chose you because of your career. And our class, despite all its political differences, is united in the question, how do I find and start my life's work? Like, in this crazy environment, how are you supposed to do it? And that question just gripped and captivated me. One, because I have a 20-year-old daughter, but also I have been reporting on employment for almost my whole career. I mean, people think the Harvey Weinstein story is about sex. It's kind of not. Like, it's about work. It's about entry-level work. And I should say we have someone really special in the audience tonight. There are many incredible women who've come forward about Harvey Weinstein, including to the Times. One of them, who's been very brave and incredibly just articulate and powerful in her storytelling, is Catherine Kendall. And this is her mom. Yeah. I love that. So I'd been reporting on employment, and I had seen I had seen the way work, and especially the employer-employee relationship, was going through a digital transformation in which our work lives were going to become much more mediated by technology, and it was going to be painful. When the AI moment arrived, it felt a little familiar to me. I felt like I had seen it for a long time. And then also, since Megan and I had broken the Harvey Weinstein story, we had traveled to a lot of campuses, and I could feel the rising ambivalence, cynicism, and apprehension among young people about the workplace. Like, the fear that work was kind of a dystopian place, the fear that getting a job was becoming really hard, that even if you managed to get a decent job because of high housing prices, it might not pay for a decent place to rent or to buy. So to get to craft a need, as you know, the assignment of a commencement address is to lift people up. You cannot give a bummer of a commencement address. It's like a sin against God. So I had a really interesting challenge on my hands, which is, first of all, I had their great question they had asked me. And then I had the challenge of, what can I say to them that's actually galvanizing? Not sort of falsely or cheerily optimistic, but what can I give them that's really good and is going to give them some grounded hope? And so I thought about all the employment reporting I had done for years. I thought about my own life. I thought about my friends and their careers. And I said to myself, the two people who are both happy and successful, because we want both, have found a craft and a need and married them. By craft, I mean, what is your special skill or expertise that you have that other people don't, that distinguishes you in the marketplace, that protects you, maybe not entirely, but affords some protection against being treated as disposable or interchangeable? Any of us who are employees can be fired at any time, but your craft is your own. And what I wanted to say to young people is that this is really hard to tell when you're 22, even if you're brilliant and have great grades or whatever, but craft is incredibly enjoyable. Like, when you really, really learn to do something well, when you've invested the time and you can exercise those muscles, that to me is when work becomes the most enjoyable. And so and your craft can be hard to search for. There can be some struggle in terms of how to find it, but I think it can be a very rich and fulfilling search.
I loved how you gave really concrete advice on how to find
you.
it. If you just don't know how to find it at all, ask your friends what they think you're really good
Yeah.
at. I thought was brilliant. And then be curious about how, when you're performing certain tasks, it makes you feel in your body.
Yeah.
like is a really good clue. Sorry to interrupt.
No, and also, and careers are made from stimulation. You know, we send our kids to these fancy schools, and they sit in these pretty book-lined libraries, and they marinate in their own aspiration and fear. But like, you don't figure out your career through introspection. You do it through like
interacting with the world.
actually working and getting a reaction. Okay, so if craft is authority, need is propulsion. And by the way, I think part of why I appreciated craft is that I ended up learning a craft that I didn't even really know existed. Like, I don't think I understood what investigative journalism was when I was young, let alone the fact that it was this really intricate thing that you had to spend years learning. Okay, so need is propulsion. Need is, you don't want your career to be like a lonely paddle, you know, upstream. You want to be pushed by a rushing river. And the reason I wanted to talk about need is that over the course of my lifetime, I had seen these changing flavors of like the thing you supposedly have to study to be successful. Going back to when I was in high school, the big advice was learn Japanese. Does anybody remember this? We were told in like truly with a straight face that the Japanese were going to take over the world economy, and that if we didn't speak Japanese fluently, we were going to be losers and we were going to be left behind. Meanwhile, the Japanese stock market languished for 30 years after I graduated from high school. Then it was genetics, and then it was Mandarin, and then it was coding. I hear it's econ now. And look, these are all great areas of pursuit. Obviously, these are wonderful things to study if that's your passion. But are any of them golden tickets that are going to insulate you from the ugliness of the job market? No, like it's conventional wisdom, it's herd thinking. But with need, what I wanted to challenge these students to do was to say, what is your independent assessment of what society is going to need over the course of your working life? What products, what care, what information? Like whether through business or something altruistic, how are you going to serve other people? And what I believe is that when you pair a craft with a need, the two begin to work together. And that's really when the magic happens. Because when your craft gets good, you can see new needs. And then you have to learn more craft to fill those needs. And then like the world will change and you'll deal with problems you didn't anticipate. But if your craft is really good, you'll have some mastery in how you do it, and on and on and on and on. So I wanted to get them out of this cycle of just looking for a job. I wanted them to aim their aspirations a little bit higher. And I also wanted to equip them with some wisdom that was going to see them through what is clearly a very, very rough time in the entry-level job market that is nowhere near over. Oh, and then finally, this like AI moment is telling young people a terrible thing. The message is basically, you're not needed. You're going to be superfluous. We're not going to need paralegals. We're not going to need business analysts. And that you're not needed message is incredibly damaging, and it's wrong. It's wrong. Like anybody who's been in the workplace knows that we need young people in the workplace. We need fresh blood. My favorite example of this came a few weeks ago. I was doing an event very much like this one, but it was with Jason Sudeikis, the great comedy actor, and we were talking about this.
I'm only a little less famous than him.
Well, yeah, and just as funny. We were talking about this, and Jason said, "This is the reason Saturday Night Live has been good for 50 years. How can you explain a program holding on to that kind of success and cultural relevance for an entire half century?" And he said, it's because Lorne Michaels was constantly bringing in young people. He was constantly bringing in fresh blood. So I want young people to have a rejoinder that basically says, like, of course I'm needed. Of course my talents and hard work and growth are welcome in the workplace.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're really sort of part of the key to relevance in so many ways that perhaps they don't even know yet. Do you think that this advice or this wisdom is any different to what you would have given 20 years ago? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you mentioned that a lot of the forces that are at play today, and I'm just curious, what do you think is so different, or what about it is perpetual?
Oh, man. Okay. So who in this room has done an AI interview? Nobody? Oh, you have. Okay. Will you tell us a little bit about it?
It's an out-of-body experience.
You were applying for a job?
Uh, it was not related to my. I ended up not taking it. I didn't take the job. Thank you.
What field? Wait, you're not getting off that easy.
Well,
What field? What field was it in broadly?
I'm in AI.
Oh, got it. And so, what was the? Wait, let's pause. Who here had no idea that AI interviews existed? Okay, great. So we found the. Well, no, we're not done. We found the difference
I
between
should
what.
never have answered. I know you're a journalist.
We're off the record. We found the difference between like what's happening and what people know. So will you just give us the facts of like you log on to this thing? Like what is it?
Well, you log on. You're told to wait, and then an AI comes on. It's just a voice. This voice. It wasn't a picture. It wasn't an avatar or anything like that. And you answer questions, and you have no idea exactly how it's going to end or where it's going to go, and maybe it'll go nowhere.
Okay, thank you. Give a round to our friend. So yeah, the biggest difference now is that the process of searching for a job has largely been digitized, not entirely. But to look for a job now is to look through these. I see some young people in the back. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. But to look for many jobs is to search giant digital portals. There are often ghost listings, and you're not sure if like they really still need somebody or if it's just still up there to attract resumes. You often do not meet anybody in the course of applying for the job. You often don't hear back or get any feedback. First round interviews are often through AI. And you can go through the whole process without like really getting like any feedback or response or direction from anybody. So not only is the entry level job market tough right now, as I'm sure all of you know, but it's a very lonely place to be because these young people are entering the workforce and not meeting anybody in the process. Like I'm talking to young people who say, Jodi, I applied for 150 jobs, and not only did I not get a bite, I didn't meet anybody. And we think of looking for work. Looking for work has always been anxiety inducing, don't get me wrong, but we think of it as a social process filled with coffees and handshakes, and you learn something from every conversation. And if you have a bad interview, you get some feedback and maybe you learn how to do better the next time. And that's really flattening. We're in this era of like hyper efficient, hyper optimized online hiring. And so, that's worrying to me. I think that's just like really difficult. It makes it so much harder to get started. And then I think the advice changes because I do think there are some tactical ways to get around it. But you have to be smart and you have to be aggressive. I mean, the biggest thing that I've learned, like talking to employers and career coaches, college counselors, young people, is like essentially don't be fooled. The digital door is not the real door, right? Like with every job now, they're even the ones that have essentially digital entry points. Of course, like you have to go through that process, but the game is to find some human connection that can give you intel on what the employer really wants, or maybe even help you forge a relationship that will provide a different path to that job. That, like, essentially, the more digital the process becomes, the more real relationships are important, in part because I think employers are having trouble with this technology too. AI job applications are very homogenizing because a lot of kids are using keywords to sort of like, right, like to reward what the AI wants. But the problem is that if everybody uses the same keywords, everybody looks the same. And so the things that make job applicants special, the sharp edges, the unique experiences, the really distinct talents, those are harder to discern. And so it becomes more important than ever to introduce yourself to somebody in person.
Or you could have two AI avatars, the one from the workplace and the one from the interviewee talking to each other.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it sounds like something that the skills of an investigative reporter would be very useful to, figure out how to find a human at this company and then get them to respond to you. When you were doing research for this book, what did you find out that people got really wrong about how to start? And what are some of the more damaging myths that we're all telling ourselves and each other than some of the ones you've already mentioned, about, how to start and how not to start?
I'll give you two. One is that it's a race. AI is a little bit setting our emotional temperature right now as a culture, and AI is fast. Everything about it is fast. Its growth is fast, but also the speed at which it spits out answers to complicated questions is incredibly fast. I'm encountering too many young people who are falling for the idea that finding your life's work is a race, and that, like, the people who figure it out by freshman year are better off than the people who figure it out by sophomore year, who are better off than the people who figure it out by age 25. Given the chaos and instability out there, there's a lot of pressure to commit. And my worry is that in that very understandable search for stability, people are leaving out the kind of, like, you can't short circuit self-discovery, right? Just the way that we know that an essay has to be revised many times in order to be really great, or just the way we know that a science experiment usually needs time to play out. The process of finding yourself is not something that you can usually get done by, like, second semester sophomore year. I'm worried that it's becoming harder to take on risk. You just don't get anywhere without risk, in life and certainly in your career. And especially when you're young, that's in many ways the time to take on some risks. And I'm afraid that everybody is so worried about everything that they're not allowing themselves to take on the really good and necessary kinds of risks. Then the second thing is parents are getting too involved. I know, and I'm 51, and I have a college-age daughter, so I implicate myself in this. But I mean, you don't have to raise your hands, but raise your hand mentally if you've done a little bit of this. Parents are reading all of these stories about how horrible the entry-level job market is, and all these stories about the coming of AI, and we're inhaling, right? We are. We're really, really worried about the kids. And so we're seeing parents who are really coming to bear heavily on their kids' choices of careers, who are, like, essentially trying to choose for them or somehow insulate them from this very difficult employment environment. And I don't think that's going to turn out well. Your life, your move, you've got to live your dreams, not your parents. You deserve a chance to try the things that you want to try. And also, as parents, our advice is really outdated. Like, I think there's a nuanced balance here, because on the one hand, we need to be bringing young people more help right now. Like, starting has always been hard. It has gotten harder. Like, everybody should be mentoring, helping, just being kind like crazy. On the other hand, our generational experiences in the workplace are fundamentally different than what younger people are encountering. And so there can be some real tension in families and some mistranslation about, well-meaning advice that can come off the same way. So I think parents, it's funny, my big suggestion for parents, I think, is like, help somebody else's kid. Take all of that energy you're feeling and like apply it to the kid down the block and let somebody else do it for your kid.
My sons are actually sitting in the back. You guys love it when I give you advice, don't you?
Yeah.
Love it. I think you're so right, and something to always remember, I think, is if you choose your child's career for them and it doesn't work out well,
it's on you, baby.
Who are they going to blame?
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, at least let them make that choice and then hate it. But you talked about in the book, one of the pieces of advice was like, get out of the library. Life and career and purpose is all about dealing with people. Yeah. And the sooner you learn how to do that, because it's a muscle, the better. How do you think young people are doing with that? Do we measure them against other generations? Is that unfair, or how do you think about it?
I think we've done something terrible, which is that we've lectured them for years about getting away from screens, but then we digitized the workplace, and you get hired through an AI interview, you get fired by Zoom. If you're lucky, you might end up with like an email, right? And so I think it's less of a question of like, how are young people doing? Like, I don't think it's so much about praising or blaming them. I think it's about how can we make a persuasive argument for the importance of personal relationships? Like, how can we teach them what we really know, which is that in the workplace, relationships are everything. They are
trust.
Yeah,
ultimately.
they are absolutely everything. They're the glue, and what is a set of really great workplace relationships like, and how can they acquire them? So my biggest, not everybody has a choice, a first job right now. Underemployment in particular is rampant. Unemployment is high. But if you are lucky enough to make a choice, I think the best first jobs are the high stimulation jobs. Like, I just heard about like a 23-year-old who's managing a political campaign, and I just thought, perfect, right? What a crazy job. It's going to be bananas. That kid is going to learn so much. There are a lot of high prestige jobs that I don't think are that great. Like serving, like research jobs are often very prized after college. In STEM, they can involve a little more interaction and being on a team. But in the humanities, they can be very lonely. You can be like, in a library with a pile of books and a computer. I don't think that's so great. Like working at an art gallery where nobody comes in all day, not into it. I would rather. I've talked to so many people who had first jobs that were less prestigious, but actually quite challenging and high on stimulation. And so many people reflect that those jobs taught them a lot. I mean, I pretty much believe everybody should work in a restaurant once, right? I mean, you just should, right? Even if it's for 2 months or something, you should experience what it's.
It also teaches you to be a good human and to tip.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. But also like the kind of ballet and coordination of what makes a restaurant work. Absolutely. So yeah, I would say, especially for anybody who doesn't know what they want to do, go for the stimulation, because you're not going to discover what you want to do with your life on like a walk in a pretty park. You're going to do it by reacting to situations.
Maybe
in the
hating
workplace.
it, but at least learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Along the same lines, one of the other pieces of advice you give as an option for determining where to start is finding someone that you respect, that you want to work for.
Oh my God, that's so. That was another thing when I looked around my life and my reporting. It was a huge differentiator. You know, who went to work for people they respected, people who were good bosses in some way, broadly defined, because the definition of a good boss is not always going to suit, you know, your politics or your preconceptions. But who went to work for people who cared about the well-being of the people who worked for them, people who were teachers, people who had like some sort of genuine wisdom to impart, versus who went to work for faceless corporations that did not treated them as totally disposable, even if they were high achieving, and who went to work for like flashy characters who were not ultimately that trustworthy. That is one of the best things you can do for yourself. And again, I realize not everybody has this opportunity, but if you can go work for a great boss, you're going to be much better off.
Would you be okay sharing the
Yeah.
snippet about, is it Michael Kinsley?
Yeah, no, it's
such a good one.
It's a lovely thing to share here in DC because it's a very DC story. So I should say one of the reasons I wrote this book was because I totally belly flopped into the workplace. I was fired from my college paper. I dropped out of law school to become a journalist, and I was lucky enough to get my first job in journalism at Slate when it was started. It had just been started by Michael Kinsley, and I see nods in the room. I mean, Mike was and is just a totally singular figure in journalism, and we had 3 different offices in New York and Washington D.C. and Seattle because Slate was owned by Microsoft. So about 6 months in, Mike offered me a promotion, and he was going to make me one of the managing editors of the magazine. And the job was out in Redmond, Redmond. And so I leapt at it because after being kicked off the college paper and dropping out of law school, and this was such a validation to be offered a promotion, and it was more money, and it was so exciting to move to the West Coast. And so I jumped on a plane, and the air smelled incredible in Seattle, and I wanted to take it. And on the last day of the trip, we were having lunch in the Microsoft cafeteria, and we were finalizing the details, and he said, "Is there anything that would keep you on the East Coast?" I was working in Slate's DC office. And I said, "Well, I have a boyfriend." But I said to him, "But Mike, I'm a big feminist, and I don't believe in staying anywhere or moving anywhere for a guy before the age of 25. And I'm 24. So I'm taking this job." And to his credit, he didn't laugh at me, but he looked at me and he said, "Jodi, I don't know, he was 48 or 49 years old. He said, I've been single my whole life. He said, people like you and I are always going to find work opportunities. Finding a partner is the hardest thing." And he said, "Do you think you might marry this guy?" And I said, "Maybe." And he said, "I'm not going to be responsible for breaking up a relationship that could result in a happy marriage." He said, "I'm withdrawing the job offer," which I'm pretty sure was illegal. But within a month, he transferred me to the New York office so I could be with my husband, Ron, to whom I've been married since 2002, and we have 2 daughters, 20 and 10. And Mike was looking out for my well-being, not his.
It's such a great example of humanity in the workplace, and why it's good to work for good people. And thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Switching gears a little away from the book. And we touched on this a little earlier with the question about, like, do people run when they see you coming? But What's it been like to go from being a journalist to being a public figure?
Oh.
What have you enjoyed? What do you miss?
What I enjoy is standing up for journalism at a time when the culture really needs it. I want people to believe. I want people to believe in the written word. I want people to believe that this work can have impact, that it matters. You know, my journalism career has involved so many unlikely things happening, including the success of the New York Times. I mean, how many New York Times subscribers do we have in the room? Thank you so much. I mean, we're 13 million strong now. And oh my God, that's extra credit, Matt. Yeah. So there were a lot of years at the Times when we were told that we were about to be put out of business. I mean, people were horrible. People would say things like, yeah, you guys are not going to exist 2 years from now. And you're like, So seeing the paper make this against the tide effort to get people to pay for good journalism and succeeding, I'm really inspired by that. I want to show it can work. I want to show the work can have potency and impact. For me, journalism is like a super, super, super optimistic pursuit. I mean, honestly, in answer to your question, I think I have it really good because I do feel I'm very grateful to be respected for my work, but I have none of the downsides of I'm not a celebrity. I'm very happy to call myself a respected writer, but I don't, my family dinners in restaurants don't get rudely interrupted. I don't have stalkers. I don't think I don't have if somebody sees me on the Acela and makes a comment, that's very nice, but it's not intrusive. It's totally focused on the work. And by the way, it's not focused on my personal life at all, right? Nobody bothers my kids. Nobody cares who I'm married to. So even though I, never really thought it would work out this way, I feel
it's the best purpose for fame,
yeah.
right? You're doing it on behalf of, you're a spokesperson for.
And again, it's about trust. I mean, what it's really about at the end of the day is if I publish something, whether in this book or in the Times, I really want you to have confidence that it's solid.
Speaking of the Times, you're now covering the Supreme Court for the New York Times. I'm very curious if that was your choice and you advocating, or they wanted to do that and turn to you. And I can guess as why now, but I'd love to hear, why did you and or the Times decide now is the time we've got to focus on the Supreme Court?
So I'm very happy to answer that. It's actually my 4-year anniversary of delving into the court. It was at first very unexpected, and then I pushed for it. 4 years ago, I got a tip. One night, somebody who I only knew a little bit said, you have to call this guy. He's got a real story. You need to get it out of him. The guy his name is Reverend Rob Shank. He in a past life, he had been a very extreme anti-abortion activist, really at the barricades. And it turns out that he was thinking of making a confession. He was tortured about it. He wasn't sure he wanted to be on the record, but he wanted to divulge that in his anti-abortion work, he had carried on a secret lobbying effort inside the Supreme Court aimed at influencing the justices. And the way it worked is that he recruited these wealthy donors, evangelical Christians and Catholics, to befriend the donors, which they did. They successfully built social lives with the justices. And it was in fact all kind of a smarmy influence operation. So that was wild. And then he also said that in the course of having done that, he was able to obtain the results of the 2014 Hobby Lobby decision early. So like I kind of like resisted the story at first, and I wasn't sure, and we had to document what he was saying, and could this really be true, and blah 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 blah. By the end of the process, I was completely hooked, because all of a sudden I was looking at the Supreme Court through an investigative prism, which is to say, 9 of the most powerful people in the country work in the dark, and we don't know the answer to basic questions about them. How partisan are the justices? How do they age in these jobs? What does having power for 20 or 30 years at a time with none of the traditional accountability levers we use for public officials, what does that do to somebody? Look at the way they're treated. They're treated with a combination of obsequiousness and attack. That's a really weird way to be treated for years and years on end. What are their relationships with one another? What kind of a leader is Chief Justice John Roberts? How is he navigating and countenancing the Trump era? Like, we do not and did not know answers to these questions, even though the Supreme Court is at the very center of our national life. And so I became determined to find answers. You know, for a long time in journalism, the approach was to cover the cases, meaning the decisions, the oral arguments. And my colleagues who did it brilliantly. I mean, that is really hard work. The court doesn't really operate in English. It kind of operates in the Latin of the law. And doing that interpretive work is really hard. But I felt we needed another layer. I wanted to prove that we could actually find things out about the Supreme Court. And so I started during the Biden era. It wasn't during the Trump era, but it was during this period of a drop in public trust in the courts, the Supreme Court in particular, big questions about the law, scandals.
Increase of the use of shadow docket.
Yeah, absolutely, scandals over what some of the justices had done, and it just seemed like we needed to know more, and we still do. So this is a collective. We have 5 people on our team: Roz Halderman, Abby Van Sickle, Ann Marimo, Adam Liptak, and I. We're all doing different kinds of stories, but journalists scrutinize power. That's what we do, and we can't have a Supreme Court-sized exception in the middle of that compact. But we also have to invent a way of covering the Supreme Court, because I don't think we should cover it the way we cover the executive branch or the legislative branch. Form needs to meet content in how we do it.
Well, you've done seemingly impossible things before, so I trust that you will be the person to do that along with your team. If someone leaves Evermay tonight thinking about a dream they have, maybe one they've been postponing, what is one piece of advice you hope that they leave with?
Like a career dream?
Yeah.
Ooh. Are we talking early career or mid-career?
Wherever you want to go.
I think honestly, sometimes the hardest thing is to say what you really want and what you're really interested in. It can sound presumptuous, it can sound unrealistic, and I think also everybody has inhaled the negativity of this environment, and so there's just like a lot of can't and shouldn't and internalized how dare I. And for me, the most important step for me in entering journalism was just saying I wanted to be a journalist.
I so agree with you. I had an excellent mentor. You were talking about the need for mentors. I agree. We need mentors. Excellent mentor once. And he got me to say out loud what I wanted to do. And at first, I think I said it really quietly. I want to run a small museum. And and he said, wait, why are you qualifying it with the word small? He scrutinized what I wanted and helped me refine it. And most importantly, say it out loud. Because once you say it to the universe, you feel way more propelled to do it.
No, and especially now, I think now there's this internalized, like, how dare I ask for a big heaping pie of career happiness when I just read, that story about unemployment. So no, we really do need to force ourselves.
So say it out loud is the
Say
advice.
it out loud.
All right. And I have one more question, and then we've got this awesome audience who probably have burning questions for you as well, and I want to leave time for that. So if you ran into Jodi from 10 years back, what might you tell her? And if you ran into Jodi for 10 years in the future, what do you think she might have to say? And you can choose one or answer both.
Well, the problem with running into Jodi from 10 years back is that it would have been 2026, and I couldn't tell her that
2016, yeah.
2016, right? And in 2017, we broke the Weinstein story. So, like, no spoiler alerts. I couldn't tell
Funny,
her.
you went to the rules of time travel. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Maybe the best thing to say would have just been something like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you have no idea what's going to happen. I'd worked at the New York Times for a long time by then. And something about the world, still containing a great deal of possibility. And also something about, I mean, I knew this, like this wasn't something I needed to be persuaded of, but just having confidence in the craft, like everything good that has ever happened to me in journalism is just because I really stuck to the rules, to be honest, like in terms of just continued investment in the medium. And then what was the second question about 10 years?
If you were to run into Jodi from 2036, do you have any idea what she might say to you?
Oh my God, no, I have no, it's almost like a trick question. Like the nature of the question is that I have no idea who that person is going to be. I don't know exactly what I want to do in the next 10 years, but I do know that I still want to keep showing people what this medium can do, and in particular that journalism can help people. And I like making advances. Like journalism on the whole is on the defensive, right? And there's like there's very much a contracting quality to it. So it's very important for me to keep expanding. Like with the Me Too stories, it was really good to show that that entire category of stories could be done, right? We were like we're taking, even in a degrading information environment, we were taking something that was supposed to be off limits to journalism and saying, we could tell the story. And then for the past 4 years with the Supreme Court, I've also been taking something that was supposed to be off limits to journalism and saying, we can tell that story too. So I'd like in the next 10 years to somehow continue the forward motion.
I have no doubt that you will have, and we'll all be watching on the edge of our seats, I'm sure. Thank you, Jodi. This was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.